The Saints didn't win their preseason finale against the Titans, but I think we absolutely got our answer at the backup quarterback position with Spencer Rattler putting on a great performance. We're going to talk about that, who's in, who's out regarding the 53-man roster, all that right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvoglu. And as always, guys, if you enjoy our content we're doing here at Boo Crew Media, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate it. The Straight Up Saints podcast is presented by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. You've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt offshore. Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. That's right, a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. So let's talk about Spencer Rattler and your New Orleans Saints, because, man, this was the day for him. This was kind of that moment where you see that you are the backup quarterback for this team, at least now. I mean, who knows? He could end up becoming the starter at some point. But throughout the preseason, first game, Rattler had some great moments, but I thought Jake Haener was pretty efficient, so you felt like it was kind of a deadlock. The second game of the preseason, both of them really struggled, and it was disappointing because Rattler had the opportunity early, didn't take advantage, and then Haener had the opportunity once Rattler kind of faltered, and he didn't look good either. So you go into the third game, and as a team, as a fan base, I'm sure the coaching staff, you're saying, man, I hope we get some clarity on this backup quarterback position. Well, there is clarity now, and if the Saints go any direction that is other than Spencer Rattler being the backup quarterback, then they absolutely screwed this up, because Spencer today did so many great things. But I think the two that stand out is the NFL caliber throws, the touchdown pass to St. Brown, his ability to get the ball downfield. Honestly, St. Brown should have had two big plays. There was one on the left side of the field. And I talked about this when we did a halftime show, where that's an NFL caliber elite throw with a better wide receiver. They're probably coming down with it. Chris Olave's probably coming down with that throw. And we're talking about him dropping it in the bucket. The 43-yard pass to A.T. Perry, which when it happened, I thought, oh, man, if he leads him, that's another touchdown pass for Spencer Rattler. But when you watch it again, it's in the face of pressure. He's not the biggest quarterback in the world. To get that throw off, get it 43 yards down the field, and keep the chains moving, and you score a touchdown, a play later anyway, it's great for Spencer. So the arm talent was on display. The confidence was on display. And the one thing I love about Spencer, and this is the third thing that I'll mention for him, that just stands out, is Spencer doesn't look flustered. I'm not trying to knock Jake Haener. I think Jake Haener does some nice things, especially, look, he's a day 3 pick. I don't think Jake Haener looks awful, but there's times when the pocket's collapsing and it almost feels like Jake Haener's flustered. I don't get that vibe from Spencer Rattler. It doesn't mean it's always going to be a great play. We've seen him fumble in the preseason. We've seen him have some rough moments, but with Spencer, it seems like there's this confidence, this, ability to say, I got this, I'll take care of it. And I love that about him. He's got the reps in college, whether it was at Oklahoma and South Carolina, and it just seems easy for him. And I know that there wasn't consistency throughout the preseason, right? If you look at the whole preseason numbers, all right, it's a little inefficient at times. But if we're just going off today, would you rather have the quarterback who was 8 of 16 for 87 yards, or the one who was 7 of 13 for 105 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions, and led all 3 touchdown drives? I don't think it's a coincidence, because we could sit here and we could say, man, the Saints just happened to run the football better when Rattler was in there. But also the quarterback's got to do a good enough job to keep the defense honest. And when you do that, you're going to have a better chance at running the football with success. So I think Spencer also deserves a decent amount of credit for that. So again, I don't want to jump the gun and say that Spencer is the future of the franchise, or that Spencer should be the starting quarterback, because I said this often, and I'll say it one more time before we wrap up this preseason completely. I think if the Saints are going to have success with Spencer Rattler at the helm, I think it starts with him not playing this year, because I think the best thing for Spencer is to avoid playing behind this treacherous offensive line. Don't have to worry about this lackluster receiving core, and he gets to learn. And then next year, when you're trying to reset the cap, Spencer as your starting quarterback on a rookie salary is absurd. That's how you get back to being a competitive football team. So I think that's the best kind of avenue for thinking big picture. But in the now, absolutely, he is your QB2. He made the best throws out of any quarterback you have on the roster during the preseason, and today was the moment for him. And I'm going to be honest, when Jake Haener comes out and he has a chance to get them, in field goal range to tie it or a touchdown to take the lead late in the game, my confidence isn't there. Where the first game of the preseason with Spencer against the Cardinals, we don't have much of a sample size of him. I weirdly felt confident, and I don't know how to explain it outside of the it factor or that gut instinct that you have, but you get that feeling when you watch Spencer Rattler, at least in the preseason, and that part's exciting for us Saints fans because we haven't had a lot to cling on to this offseason, and there is some hope there. So Spencer Rattler, without a doubt, QB2. I really don't even think this is up for debate anymore. If the Saints do anything otherwise, I honestly think the fan base is going to freak out. I really do. I think the fan base is going to absolutely lose it. So Spencer Rattler, he's QB2. I don't think there's a doubt about this. So we're going to move on to the wide receiver group because, man, I got some thoughts there. I just want to remind you guys, if you are enjoying our content, I'm going to ask you nicely to do two things. One, smash that like button. We greatly appreciate it. And two, if you have thoughts that you want to share, get them in the chat below, and I will make sure to pull up your comments so we can see what you have to say, whether it's a thought, a roster prediction, any commentary, we'll put it up there, and we'll get your thoughts in. So let's talk about the wide receivers for the New Orleans Saints because, guys, I got to admit, I am quite scared about that position group. Quite scared. I know it's the preseason, so you don't get Olave. Shaheed's been banged up. Taysom Hill doesn't play today. Alvin really hasn't done much in the preseason, so we get that. I get that. And those are the four guys that you're going to lean on heavily offensively. But football is such a physical game. Injuries happen. And the Saints right now, the way the roster is constructed, guys, they are an injury away from saying, who the fuck are you going to trust when you're throwing the football? And I thought about it today. Because I said Rattler had a good game. His game could have been better if Bub Means didn't drop passes, if A.T. Perry didn't drop passes, if St. Brown didn't drop passes. Same thing for Haener. Haener had some crucial drops when he was in there. So the Saints right now are lacking depth. And I don't know why they are so against just stacking up on wide receivers. There are certain teams that always take wide receivers. The Niners just made the Super Bowl and they had Ayuk, they had Debo, and they said, hey, first round pick, we're going to use it on Ricky Pearsall. You watch the Chiefs. They made the Super Bowl, granted, not the best wide receiving core. What do? They go out and they get Hollywood Brown. They get Xavier Worthy. So, they're adding talent. The Eagles have A.J. Brown. They have Devontae Smith. They go out. They trade for Jahan Dotson. Granted, third-round pick's kind of pricey. But the point stands. Good NFL teams love adding more talent. And they feel like, especially at skill positions, you can never have enough. The Saints, on the other hand, though, are still going with we'll have one really good receiver, pretty solid two, and that's it. But if one of them goes down and Shaheed's been banged up, you are literally relying on Olave to do it all. And that just seems so incredibly, unfair and risky to do. Because, again, I thought St. Brown played well today, but I don't trust him in a big spot. I thought A.T. Perry made some plays today. But we don't even know if A.T. Perry's going to make the roster because we don't know what version of A.T. Perry's going to show up on a given day. But Memes, he made some plays today. He also made some terrible mistakes today. He dropped the ball a lot. Can you trust him? I don't think so. Cedric Wilson, he'll make the roster. He's a vet. But Cedric Wilson isn't in that upper echelon of playmakers. He's a solid wide receiver. I don't know why the Saints felt like this group was good enough. And I don't think there is an easy fix out there, a vet that you can just add to fix this. I mentioned Juju Smith-Schuster earlier this year. He's not going to fix shit. Michael Thomas, I'm sorry, guys, he never plays. So even if we want my MT back, MT's going to play, 3 games before he's hurt again? So I don't think the Saints have the horses in the stable to get this thing moving in the right direction if someone goes down, God forbid. So you're so reliant on Olave and Shaheed and Taysom. It frustrates me. So that would be one of my observations from today that I kind of went away from. And I was like, man, because that's going to linger into the regular season. I could complain about other things. I could complain about Foskey, but I don't expect Foskey to play at all. The Saints have guys above him on the depth chart. Receiver room, you're relying on 2 to 3 minimum. You might need 4, and the Saints don't have 4. They have 2 and a decent vet at 3. So that for me is something that I think will stick. It's a concern, and I don't know how they're going to fix it because I think this is something they'll just have to fix next offseason, not one that they can fix immediately right now. But wide receiver room, I'm kind of on the fritz about it when it comes to my confidence level. It's shaky, but hopefully they'll use this as a lesson for future off seasons, drafts and free agency to say, maybe we should invest a little bit more in the wide receiver position. It's one of the most important in football in today's era. And that's why guys are getting paid a shit ton at the wide receiver spot. So Saints need wide receiver help. There is no doubt about it. So before I get to you guys, I want to do a little who's in, who's out, and that's in regards to my thoughts about the Saints roster, 53-man roster. August 29th, I believe, is the deadline. I could be wrong. I might have the date wrong. But they got to get things moving, and they got to figure it out. Let me pull up the roster deadline real quick, because the Saints are going to have some decisions to make, and they're not all going to be easy. Excuse me, August 28th. Got my days mixed up. So 53-man roster, Tuesday, and we'll go from there. Or Tuesday, I don't even know if I have my dates right. But anyway, August 28th it says, but I believe August 28th is not a Tuesday. So it's Tuesday, August 27th. Excuse me. I should learn how to read a freaking calendar. Who's in, who's out? Let's go through it. Saints have some interesting decisions to make. Some that probably won't sit well with people. Some that may make you excited. I don't know. It's up to your preference. So let's go through some of the names here. I'm going to go just start rattling off names, and we'll say whether or not we think they're in or out. You guys give me your predictions as well, or ones that if I missed, throw them in there and give me your thoughts. I'd love to see them. I'm going to go with Equanimeous St. Brown. Today, I actually think he's in. And it doesn't mean that I think he's going to play a role this year. I just think he looked decent today. And the Saints might like the fact that there is that connection between him and Rattler, because who knows, maybe Rattler might play at some point this year. And Equanimeous has played before, experience with the Packers, experience with the Bears. He's been around the block. So I'm going to say as of now, I kind of think Equanimeous St. Brown makes the roster, but it's so shaky between him, Bub Memes, and A.T. Perry. You're picking 2 out of the 3. And A.T. Perry, to me, I had out earlier today, and then he made some plays late in the game. I go, oh, maybe he's in. But I think that's going to come down to a judgment call. I really think there's a good chance he gets cut. And again, I'm not necessarily defending that, but I think the Saints like that they can use Bub Memes on special teams, and that might give him an edge. So Equanimeous, I'm going to say in. And right now, I might say A.T. Perry out, but I think A.T. Perry should be in. But I'm just going off the gut feeling that I have. I think he might be out. Jordan Mims is a clear in. I think we saw that today. Saints used him early, didn't use him late. I thought he's cleared. I think James Robinson is out. I think that there were moments where he looked good, but I think he might be out. The interesting one's going to be Jacob Kibodi, because Jacob Kibodi, I thought, okay, that's like a practice squad player you hopefully keep on. But, I mean, this kid balled out 12 carries, 59 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Second half was all Kibodi. Literally play after play after play. So I'm very fascinated to see what happens with Kibodi. I think that he made a nice case for himself. But my guess is that Kibodi, they might try to sneak on the practice squad, but at the very least, he leapfrogged James Robinson in my mind. And I thought he made a lot of plays. So I'm very fascinated to see what happens with him. Mims, though, is the no-brainer. So you know you're going Alvin, you know you're going Jamal, you know you're going Mims. What the heck do you do with Kendre Miller? I mean, where the hell is Kendre Miller is the real question. We haven't seen him in such a long time. So I'm going to go with Kibodi kind of on the fritz. I think there's a very, very decent chance the Saints keep him. I could also see them trying to cut him and stash him. But Bub Memes will be in. I think the special teams factor matters. Michael Jacobson, he's out. I mean, I think he was out anyway, but then when you have the penalties that he had at the end of the fourth quarter, that pretty much cost your roster spot if there was any doubt about it. Lou Hedley, I'm sorry. Enough of this Lou Hedley bullshit. Enough. I am so tired of Lou Hedley being in this situation where the Saints actually need him to step up. He never does anything, guys. I don't care how badass he might look for a punter. He's just bad, and he's ass. So, yeah, he is a badass. He's bad, and he's ass, and that's what he is at your punter. Wait for someone to cut someone and go after him. Maybe if the Niners cut Presley Harvin because they do have Mitch Wishnowsky, that's a guy that I'd go after. And he punted really well against the Saints last week, so you have some sample size there to go after him. So, Lou Hedley, out. And I wouldn't keep Matthew Hayball either. I don't think they have a punter on the roster. I think you just go get a new one because Lou Hedley's absolutely atrocious. And you can make an argument he lost them the game today with the punt. So, Lou Hedley, get him the fuck out of here. Isaiah Foskey, I think he makes the roster, but if I had it my way, he would not make the roster because this man does nothing but take up space on the defensive line and get in cardio on game day. And this is coming from a guy who thought that he was a good pick for the Saints because I loved watching him at Notre Dame. He was a playmaker, but clearly he doesn't have the athleticism or the gifts to succeed at the pro level. He was a really good college football player who now when he's in the pros, I feel like they just put him out there and he's running around getting his steps in to close all the rings on his Apple Watch, and then he's calling it a day. That's how I feel about Isaiah Foskey. He does nothing. He does nothing. I'm not even kidding right now. He goes out there and he never makes a play. So he probably will be in because of special teams and because he's still a second-round pick who's only a year removed from getting drafted. but he's only getting drafted off he's only getting kept on the roster off draft merit, not off what you're actually producing. Because what he's producing is garbage. And frankly, guys, it's frustrating that a top 50 pick is giving this team nothing. So Foskey, I'd say he should be out, but I think he's going to be in. On the flip side, Rico Payton. I think Rico Payton has balled out this entire preseason. And if there's one guy that I think has earned that spot on the defensive group to make the team, I think Rico Payton should be in. He has played well in practice. He's played well in every single preseason game. And I think it'd be an absolute travesty if this kid doesn't make the roster, because I don't know what message you're sending if you go out there and you ball every preseason game, you ball in practice, and you don't make the roster. So I hope he makes it. I know the Saints have depth at corner with Lattimore, with Kool-Aid, with Adebo, with Alante, but I would keep Rico Payton. There's a confidence about the way he plays. He's a physical corner, and he's stepped up every single game. So I'm going to say Rico Payton's in. And if he's out, boy, I'll be pretty pissed on Tuesday when that comes out. But the ones that I feel confident about being out, I would say Michael Jacobson for sure. I'd say Lou Hedley for sure. I think that no knock on them. I'm not saying they played bad, because I actually think they had moments, but I don't think Mike Rose will make the roster. I just don't see it for him. Andrew Dowell made some plays today, but even him, that's a special teams case. Hudson probably at this point, I don't think he makes it. Christian Boyd's definitely going to make it. I think the Saints have seen a lot that they've liked from him, especially in practice. He's someone who stood out at the defensive line. So those are just some quick hitters. But kicking game, I think it's Blake Rupe who's your starting kicker. I know we talked about Smythe's ability to kick it deep. Rupe's been money in the preseason. I got to give him credit on that. And you just hope that consistency carries over. So that's where I'm at with who's in, who's out. And look, it'll change in terms of how the Saints pick the roster, and then I'll react to what they do when it comes out on Tuesday. But that's how I feel right now. So I'll get to your comments in just a second, guys. Before I do that, I want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors, Standard Mortgage.
Buying a house is one of the largest financial investments you'll ever make. That's why you need the experience and the support of the Standard Mortgage team. Whether you're looking to purchase, refinance, or consolidate debt through a cash-out refinance loan, Standard Mortgage will help you every step of the way. For the last century, we've grown to 7 locations across Louisiana, but we've always called New Orleans home. While others are busy raising your rates, we're focused on raising the standard. Visit us today at stanmore.com, STANMOR.com. NMLS number 44912, Equal Housing Lender.
Once again, thank you to Standard Mortgage for being part of the program. We greatly appreciate it. So I'm going to get into any comments you guys have for the rest of the show. So pretty much I'm kind of handing the baton off to you guys, and we'll see what you have to say. So make sure, again, guys, to leave your comments, thoughts, predictions, concerns, hype. I don't care. Whatever you want to put in there, put it in the chat. I'll pull it up, and we'll go from there. And make sure to like the video and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to start off with Cole saying, I was critical at halftime, but shout out to A.T. Perry for showing up in the second half. Need to see consistency, but the flashes are still there. Yeah, A.T. Perry might be the most frustrating young player on the Saints, because he didn't show a lot early in the season last year because he didn't get opportunity. Got opportunity late, played really well. Then we hear about how he's not doing enough in training camp. Then he plays well in the first preseason game. Then he doesn't do much the second preseason game. Then he struggles in the first half of today's preseason game. And then he plays well at the end of this one. Just so much inconsistency. The good thing is that he's consistently inconsistent. So we're not really surprised by that anymore. But I think that for the Saints, they have a really fascinating decision to make on him, because I think A.T. Perry is a gamer. When the lights are bright, I think he can make plays. The problem is, though, the Saints are trying to send a message. They want guys that are working hard. They want guys that are consistent. You know what you're going to get week in, week out. And you don't get that from A.T. Perry, and I think that part frustrates them. That said, I thought A.T. Perry really did finish strong today. And at first, I had him out for the roster, and then I put in question mark on my notes because I don't know what to make of A.T. Perry. I want to love him. I want to get frustrated at the same time. So I really don't know. But I agree with you, Cole. Kudos to him for stepping up, because it could have been a really ugly game for him, and he did make the most of it towards the end. Fred says, Headley's going to lose us a game this season. I think out of all the people for the Saints in terms of in and out, he's the one that is the easiest call. He should be out. There should be no debate about Lou Hedley. He is not a good punter. He brings nothing to the table. He should be cut. And I agree with you. If they keep him, he's going to cost them a game at some point this year. And then who do you have to blame? All you have to blame is yourself. Mitchell says Jake Kaner wanted to make a play so bad. He played himself. He should have kept running. I don't know why he launched that ball to Shaq Davis. I mean, I don't mind the attempt. Maybe if Shaq Davis and the corner don't get kind of tripped up, maybe there's a play to be made. So I don't mind that. You could argue you run for it. They're in a pretty bad spot anyway. No timeouts left. About 25 seconds? So I understand why it happened. Derek says Rattler hit those throws. Jake missed. Give my man the job. I agree. And I think sometimes it's that simple. And it stinks. It's a brutal world. And for Jake, I'd feel terrible because he played really well in practice. Obviously, training camp, he did well. There was confidence, but the games matter. Boston says Headley better be gone tomorrow and Presley Harvin better be our punter come week 1. Couldn't agree more. Margaret says brutal ending. It was bad punt. The holds on the returns. I mean, what a rough sequence for Michael Jacobson. I didn't think he was going to make the roster anyway, but if there was any doubts, he kind of sealed them with the way he played towards the end. Fred says Rattler is number 2 QB. Ass time Perry is our 3/4 wide receiver. We don't need to waste a roster spot on Miller. Rico Payton is this year's Isaac Yedem. And Dennis Allen is still a shitty coach. Press on in a nutshell. Yeah, I mean, some of those are true. Hard to disagree with those. Backup defense didn't look good all game. It did not. It did not. Obviously Will Levis looked pretty sharp, 7 of 8. He was really efficient, but Malik Willis had some nice plays for them, and even Mason Rudolph moved the ball. So just not a good showing from the backups. The good thing is, you didn't really play anyone out there that you expect to play on game day. Jake ain't it. I mean, after the way he played today, tough to say he is. Rico Payton's got to be on the 53. I agree. Really nice day for Cabote. If we could sneak him on the practice squad, that would be ideal. Yeah, I thought Jacob Cabote really had a nice day for himself. And again, I don't know for sure if he's going to make the roster, but to have him out there, have the Louisiana kid go out there and do what he did, really impressive stuff. Really impressive stuff. And I hope for his case, it's enough to make the roster. I don't know if it is, because the Saints do have some running back depth. I don't know if it's the greatest depth in the world, but they have depth. But he really balled out. Don't let Joe Woods call another play. Yeah, I'm not worried with the defense come the regular season. I think the one thing I give Dennis Allen credit for, and it's the only thing I ever give him credit for, is that he knows how to call defense. So he'll be good. Fred says, yeah, whoever 86 is needs to start studying for a CDL. That dude cut himself today. He did. I think Kendra either gets cut or put on IR with the way the other backs played this preseason. Yeah, the Kendra thing is interesting because I think Kendry's more talented than Mims. He's more talented than James Robinson. He's more talented than Cabote. More talented than Jamal Williams. But availability matters. And the fact that this man hurt his hamstring and we haven't seen him in months now is frustrating. On the flip side, he has talent. And your scheme is actually pretty good under Kubiak for running the football. And I don't blame the Saints if they're sitting there going, man, how would, Kendra Miller look in Kubiak's scheme? It's very natural and normal to feel and think about that and speculate about what he can do. On the flip side, he can't do anything if he's not available. So that's where it's frustrating. I do agree with you, though. Your best bet is probably putting him on IR to start the year because I still think he's talented and there is something there. But I think this should be the last year you try this Kendra Miller experience. If it doesn't work, move on after this year because you can only waste so much time. Derek says, even if Carr takes us to the playoffs, I still see Rattler starting as our QB next year. If Carr takes them to the playoffs, I don't think Rattler is going to start next year. Again, it's all relative to how Carr plays. If the defense balls out and Carr doesn't look good, but they make the playoffs, which I don't see that being a possibility, then, sure. But look, if the defense plays complementary football and Carr puts up last year's numbers, but in a more efficient manner, because again, he put up 25 touchdowns, 8 picks. The problem was the 25 touchdowns and the 8 picks were not efficient. He was not good in the middle of the season, and he was great at the end of the year. If Carr can be good for a longer stretch, then you take it. And if he's able to be good enough that they make the playoffs, they probably start him another year. That said, I don't think the Saints are a playoff team this year. And I do think there's a chance that Rattler starts next year. I just hope he doesn't start this year because I don't think that's good for his development. I think the best thing for his development is to sit this year. But we'll see what happens. Is Perry hurt? Didn't he have an injury? He has been banged up here and there. His status for preseason games has been kind of, a mixed bag to say the least. But again, he did go out there today, did make some plays. Lou says Foskey and Headley can go. I agree. If Foskey's only going to have one pass rush move, it should at least be decent. What a shitty draft pick. I agree. Very, very shitty draft pick. There's no other way around it. There's no way to support it. When you're a pick like that and you do nothing, hard to defend it, guys. Very hard to defend it. Second round pick should be able to do something. I saw more from Kool-Aid McKinstry in his preseason opener than I seen from Foskey at all. And that's frustrating, and Kool-Aid's been banged up. So that's why I bring him up, So tough to defend the guy. Tough to defend him. Rico Payton is the lock to make the roster. I sure hope so. The backups played better than Penning. Penning's a mixed bag, and I put it today. I put Trevor Penning equals inconsistent. Pancake block on the first drive, whiffs on the end around the second drive, good block on the Spencer Rattler touchdown throw, more misses here and there. He's just not ready to start. And if the fact that the Saints have kind of put themselves in this situation where there's a chance he has to start, and if he doesn't start, it's because they have to go out and get a different tackle for week 1. That's just rough. That is just really rough. John says, I can't wait to get me a Hayball jersey. It's a hell of a name. I will say that. Something about a Hayball jersey just sounds great. Cody says the offense just seems to run smoother with Rattler. It does. Cole says that 7 of 13 is very misleading. Should have been at least 10-13. I agree on that. Marco says, is Howden a lock at safety next to Tyron? I don't think so, personally. I don't think so. I think the Saints have been really frustrated with Howden. I actually thought he played decent today at times. But I think the Saints have used Will Harris a little bit more. Jonathan Abrams started off hot this summer and then kind of fizzled a little bit. My guess is you probably go with Harris, but we'll see what happens. I'm sure they'll do a mix because I don't think they feel confident about who they have opposite of Tyrann Mathieu. I just don't. Derek says, is there any way to get MC back as wide receiver 3? I don't think so. I think too many things were said and there's just no going back now. That's just the way I view it. I could be wrong, but that's how I feel. Too Short says, huge drop-off of talent with this wide receiver group. We only have Olave and Shaheed. You are not lying about that. It is a very big drop-off. Marco says we need more wide receiver and O-line depth. Couldn't agree more. Tobias says Amari Cooper and Carr reunion. Who says no? I guess Cleveland would. But yeah, I would take Amari Cooper. I know he's expensive, though, but Saints need wide receivers. I won't say no to any wide receiver. The Saints need help at that position, guys. Big help. Too Short says they should put their feelings aside and call MT. I don't think they will. And I think this goes for both sides, to be honest. I think the way the Saints break up with Michael Thomas happened, and it's so frustrating because what he did was incredible. I mean, this is a guy who was on a Hall of Fame trajectory easily. What he was doing, guys were not doing in the first 4 years of their career. He was breaking records. But I think we've reached the point with Mike where it's past the point of return. It stinks because the Saints need wide receiver help, but I can't see any situation where he's on the roster. Julia says, facts, Rattler QB2. Yep. Carl says, should the Saints kick the tires on Leonard Fournette? I'm going to say no, personally. I think I'd rather see them play Jordan Mims. I'd rather see them play Cabot. I think Fournette's just kind of old, man. I just don't see it. I really don't see it. Darkside says Bub Memes over St. Brown. It's possible. I think Bub Memes' special teams factor is something that the Saints are going to value. They did draft him this year. So, you feel like the best football for him is yet to come, where for St. Brown, his best football has probably been played, and it hasn't been great. So it's possible. I could also see them keeping both. I think they have a decision to make. You're probably keeping 5 wide receivers. You know that you're keeping Olave, Shaheed, and Cedric Wilson. So Bub Memes, St. Brown, and A.T. Perry, 2 out of the 3 will make the cut. We'll see what happens. Nappy says Capote might have took Robinson's spot, if anything. It's possible. If they want 4 running backs. If they don't want 4 running backs, then you're just going Alvin, Jamal, and then Mims. But we'll see what they decide to do. Miller is in. Capote in. Capote needs to be in. Headley is out. He lost us the game. No doubt about that. He's such a bad punter, guys. It's the nicest way to put it. He really is a bad punter. Fred said, Foskey's going up against NFL linemen. Looks like my 10-year-old trying to get past me. His shitty bull rush gets shut down, and that's a wrap for that. Yeah, it is. And again, there's just no pop to his game. The speed isn't there. The strength isn't there. The secondary move isn't there. There's no adjustment. It's like he runs straight, and if that doesn't work, he's screwed. And again, I know that he's young, but it is so important when you have as many reps as he did as Notre Dame to develop secondary moves. What did you work on the last year, Isaiah Foskey? What did you work on? Besides cardio, like I said, which even then, I don't even see it, because if I compare him to guys like Chase Young and Carl Granderson, and they look like specimens, and then I see Isaiah Foskey out there, he kind of just seems like a dude. Again, compared to us regular folks, yeah, the man's a beast. But compared to his peers in the NFL, he looks like just another guy, and it's frustrating. Again, that's a high priority pick that you used on him. Fred says, I said last week, I hope Lattimore is a Saint for life. but do we consider trading him to San Francisco for Ayuk? You'd have to trade more than Lattimore to San Francisco for Ayuk. Ayuk's right now, his value is probably like a second and a third round pick. Lattimore would not get you a second and third round pick. Lattimore probably get you a third round pick with the way it's gone and the fact that he's missed so much time. Now, the idea of adding a wide receiver isn't a bad one. That's probably not the one you go for, though, because you have to trade a lot of comp for him, and then you got to pay him $30 million on top of it, and I just don't think it's ideal for the Saints. I also don't think Ayuk goes anywhere. I think he just ends up staying in San Francisco, and I've been pretty adamant about that, but they do need to add talent. I just, at this point, I almost wish that they traded Lattimore earlier this year and they found something that worked. They didn't, so that's fine. But now I hope that he's healthy, because if the Saints are going to be good this year, their defense needs to ball out, and I don't know if their defense could be top 5 good without Lattimore. I think they could be top 10 good without Lattimore. I think Lattimore healthy, though, with this defense, if Chase Young's playing well and Brian Brzee takes that next step and Carl Granderson picks up where he left off and DeMario's being DeMario and Tyrann Mathieu making plays in the back, I think that this could be a dangerous unit. I really do feel that way, but we'll see what happens with Lattimore's health. But I don't think a trade like that will happen. Marco says, do you think the Saints try to get more O-line depth before the start of the season? They do. How effective can that depth be, though? Because if teams are willing to get rid of O-linemen right now, then they probably don't think they're that good, because teams don't exactly have a lot of O-line depth. Every NFL team is an offensive line injury away from being fucked, even the good ones, So I don't know if there's depth out there that will magically fix the Saints' problem. There's depth out there that they can add, but I don't think there's depth out there that can heal everything for them. I think that there's problems that they just can't fix right now. They'll have to be addressed in the offseason, ways to get around it. The Dark Side says, A.T. Perry should have had a touchdown if Rattler had the arm strength for a better ball into the end zone. I think Rattler would have had the arm strength for a better ball there. I think the fact of the matter comes down to the way you're throwing it. He's not exactly stepping into that throw, so you are throwing it flat-footed. So yeah, in that situation, if you're throwing it flat-footed like that, you do need a stronger arm. But I think had Rattler stepped into it, there would have been no problem hitting A.T. Perry. That said, I do agree. Look, if you hit him on that one, it's a touchdown. Saints ended up scoring the next play, so it didn't matter. But in terms of that, I think it was more of the not being able to step into it and the footwork than anything else. Am I the only Saints fan nervous about week 1 in Bryce Young's sophomore season? Yes, I'm not worried about Bryce Young. We can look back at this and we could bookmark it. And if Bryce Young lights up the Saints, we can come back and say, look how stupid Chris is. He's a fucking idiot. Wouldn't be the first time I look like an idiot, but I'm sorry. Bryce Young does not scare me. I mean, I'm not a very tall person, and I pretty much see eye level with Bryce Young. He doesn't scare me. He shouldn't scare the Saints. So if I'm New Orleans, no, I'm not worried about Bryce Young. I'm not. Now, if you lose to the Panthers, yeah, then you're worried because you got the Cowboys and you got the Eagles and the Falcons and the Chiefs, and that becomes a murderer's row type of schedule. But I would be more scared about the Panthers defense than the Panthers offense. They did not add enough talent in the offseason to that group, and I think Bryce Young still has a lot of work to get done. Doesn't mean Bryce Young can't be good, by the way. I want to make that very clear. I loved Bryce Young coming out of college, and I'm rooting for Bryce Young. He's a great dude. I've spoken to him a couple times. I genuinely do like him. But I don't think the Saints should be scared of Bryce Young, at least not yet. Nobody on the defense impressed except Rico Payton. Yeah, today was a rough day for the defense. I did not see enough to walk away from and say, man, he bumped up, stock up for him, just not enough. Derek says, I think our run game looks good enough. We just need bodies. Keep the guy who's available. The holes we're punching look great. They do, for sure. Fred says, fun fact, Carr and Rattler have the same amount of playoff wins. Yeah, I know that one gets thrown around a lot. I've seen that one before. El Mendoza says, shout out to Rico Payton. I petitioned his fan group to be Rico's Roughnecks. Look, if Rico makes the roster, I'm all for us making a fan group for him because the dude balled out in the preseason. He really did. King Amir says, Turner and Foskey are waste of draft picks. I agree. The Turner one's more frustrating because, again, and I've always been on this side of the pendulum. I think Peyton Turner is a good player. He's just never healthy. Isaiah Foskey is just not a good player. And I think that's what makes me more frustrated about the Peyton Turner one. When he plays, there are moments where he makes a big play, but the next moment he's hurt. So what does it matter? Forgive says we can agree that Foskey is done and will be cut in the next year or two. Yeah, I kind of think we're heading there. Derek says them Carr touchdowns are Fugazi. Bro padded against the Falcons and Panthers. You could say that, but the end of the season for Carr, he was objectively good. I don't think we could take that away from him. Last game against the Falcons, he was good. Last game against the Bucks, he was good. Game against the Giants, he was good. Again, you want to argue competition? I'm all for that. We could talk about that. But I don't want to take away those games for him because I do think he played well in those games. Derek says, should we think about trading Lattimore for a tackle? I just don't think it's going to work. The idea is not a bad idea. It's not. I just don't think it's feasible. I don't think teams are willing to trade offensive tackles. And I don't know if teams are willing to trade offensive tackles for a cornerback who is great, but we don't know when he's going to play and how much he's going to play. And he is expensive. So there's a couple of factors for that. Derek says, can you tell me why we're struggling this bad and we're not calling Renfro? I have no idea. I'm so confused by that. Renfro looked good with Derek Carr. Thought you just bring him in, help out in the slot. It's not enough, man. Not enough from him. King Amir says we need Hunter Renfro bad. Plus he has that Raider connection with Carr. If they want to call him, I would not mind it. I'm just surprised they haven't made the call already. And since they haven't, is it just never going to happen? T-Ray says this might be a brutal season, folks. Schedule's rough. 7-10, maybe 8-9 at best. No playoffs. That's where I have them at right now, guys. I've said I think they're a 7-10 football team, but if they start off the regular season better than I expect, we are going to have to recalibrate. Because the way I see this Saints team is, I see a team that's going to start slow and finish strong, kind of like the way they have the last couple years. But I think that if they get out of the gate rough and they're like 2-4, 2-5, then you probably put a nail in them. But we'll see how that goes out. Tanner says, do you think Puka's brother makes it? I do not personally. I don't. Dre Day says Foskey will steal a roster spot from another deserving player. It is possible, man. Where you get drafted matters. It really does matter. Because Foskey, second-round pick, but he's only a year removed. Sadly, that matters for him. Neil Mendoza says, I wanted Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on the Saints, but instead we drafted Peyton Turner that year. Yeah, JOK. I mean, I think he was a guy that a lot of people wanted to. I know there was injury concerns coming out of Notre Dame, but the talent was always there. The production was there. And he just got paid. So I believe he just got paid. So good for him. Margaret says, what's frustrating to me is they only had one sack today. Flashback of last year. It is frustrating. On the flip side, Margaret, the three guys that I think are going to be paramount for them getting pass rush support are going to be Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Brian Brzee, probably in that order. And they didn't play today. So I think that part matters. To your point, though, Margaret, if one of those guys goes down, then you got to start worrying because we don't see anything out of these guys. Peyton Turner didn't do enough today, and he played. Foskey, I mean, I don't know how many more times I'm going to make fun of this guy on this show. I think I've done enough today with the whole Apple Watch / cardio joke. But it is frustrating. Fred says Titans played their starting O-line entire first half while we played our second and third string. Wouldn't worry about sacks. I do definitely agree with that point. Lady St. Irvin says, I missed your reply about MT since he hasn't been picked up. Please reply. When do we cut to 53-man roster? So the 53-man roster cut deadline is Tuesday. As for MT, I just don't think they keep him. I don't. I don't think they go back to MT, excuse me. I think so much was said behind the lines and the Saints were just ready to move on. So that's just kind of where I leave you on that. I just don't think that the Saints would be willing to go back there after what happened. I just can't see it. I'd be stunned if we ever see him back there. Forgive says, is Bakhtiari still available? I feel like you could plug him in the O-line and he automatically would be better. I believe Bakhtiari's still available. Yeah, he's still a free agent, but his knees are shot, guys. And the fact that the Jets haven't signed him and him and Aaron Rodgers are buddies, I think that tells you all you need to know. Darkseid says, you should pass on Renfro. Go watch how he blew the game versus Arizona with 2 fumbles for loss, 1 being returned for a touchdown. No, I'm not disagreeing with that. He did lose them that game. My argument for that would be that's when he was dependable, though, or when the Raiders needed to depend on him. The Saints, though, I think you're just asking for bodies. So at that point, I guess you could keep what you have. But if you sign Renfro, my thought process is not for him to be a playmaker. My process is for him to just be a body that maybe your quarterback could trust at times because of his connection with Carr. But I would not sign Hunter Renfro and say, oh, that fixes your wide receiver problem. No, the wide receiver problem is the same as when you signed him. You're just hoping to get bodies in who are maybe a little bit more experienced. One takeaway the whole preseason, yeah, not a lot. But again, it's a little different. You're putting your backups in. If we get to this problem in the season, we could discuss it. I just wouldn't put so much stock into the takeaway problem in the preseason. Saints were pretty good with the takeaways last year. I think they'll be better or just as good this year. El Mendoza says, thoughts on the FSU and Georgia Tech game, and who do you think gets upset in week 1? Well, first off, that was a great start to the college football season. Great start. I didn't expect FSU to get their ass kicked in the trenches, but they did. I mean, the holes that were there in the running game for Georgia Tech were incredible. Didn't think Haynes King was going to make as many efficient throws as he did. DJ was god-awful in the first half. So kind of what we expected. As for week one, looking now, look, Miami versus Florida will probably be fun. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, I know that's where game day's going. That's going to be the one that I'll look at. As for upsets, I'm looking around, man. I don't know if I have the guts to pull one yet. I don't have the guts to call an upset yet. I will say, though, Penn State, West Virginia could be a fun game. I hope that one ends up being a fun one. That's the one I'm going to look at for sure. Miami versus Florida will probably be a fun one. I know I believe Sunday night's LSU, USC. That one I'm not expecting an upset. I think LSU wins that game, but I think that's going to be a fun one too to start. But I'm not going to go any upsets yet. But in terms of FSU, Georgia Tech, how can you start the season any better than that? In Dublin, game-winning field goal, thrilling game the whole time. And even later on, SMU game, their comeback was really good against Nevada. They were a huge favorite. They needed a late charge. New Mexico blew that lead yesterday, so some fun ones there. Thoughts on Rashawn Wright? I mean, I thought he made some good plays, showed some good recovery speed. I don't think, though, that he makes the roster. That's just my opinion. And the Saints are loaded at corner. They got some decisions to make. But I will say that the Saints, in terms of depth at that position, is incredible, man. Incredible depth. You know, with Adebo, with Rico Payton, Alontae Taylor, Marshawn, Kool-Aid, Shamar, Ugo Madi, and Wright. I mean, there's crazy depth there. That's the position group where you feel bad for someone getting cut, but you know it's going to happen. Cole Z says the 2023 draft is a disaster. Thank God for Brzee, but besides that, what a miss. Yep. Saldiveri never plays. Foskey sucks. Kendre never plays. Hayner doesn't seem like your backup. Just miss after miss after miss. How was Clint? I want to say this about Clint and the Saints offense, since Chase asked. It's tough to really make a full assumption because you're not going to unload the whole clip in a preseason. That just seems a little ridiculous, and you don't want to expose everything you got. But I will say that the intent on how they run the football is there, and the ability to make that your identity and MO is important, because I think Pete Carmichael had no identity for the Saints last year. He basically went off what he was getting pressured. Someone said, hey, why don't you use pre-snap motion? Okay, we're using pre-snap motion next week. Why aren't you using play action? Oh, maybe I should throw that in. And I think there is a clear identity that Clint wants to establish, but you're not getting the full menu in a preseason. Kind of getting a couple of appetizers here and there. But I think we're going to get a very clear indication early on, and we'll go from there. But I think that for Clint, there is that QB friendliness to it, running the football, building everything off that, using more pre-snap movement. That matters. That should make life easier for Derek Carr and the Saints. Darset says, Antonio Brown today would be a better wide receiver than bringing back MT. Both have mental issues, but only one can still produce. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Antonio Brown should be near a football field anytime soon, but I get your point, I guess. But Antonio Brown is as loose of a cannon as it gets. Fred says, curious, was there any talk about Kubiak getting a look at head coach if DA is shit-canned? He had to know there was a high probability he could only be here 1 year. I think when you're Clint Kubiak, you take this job because if you fix the Saints offense and the Saints make the playoffs, you are a head coaching candidate for a bunch of teams. I think that's why you take that job. And it's a promotion. You get to coach an offense again and call plays. There's many reasons to take this job. I don't think Kubiak can be too worried about Dennis Allen's future, because if you think you're a good enough coach, you're thinking, I can fix that problem, and then I can get that promotion that I want. That's the way I would look at it if I were Kubiak. Cabody and Robinson look lovely. Should make it ahead of Jamal. Jamal's going to make the roster, guys. His pass blocking is something they value. I'm not saying that it's right, but they value that, and they did look good in the second preseason game. Forgive says, it's crazy how they can develop DBs to true NFL starters and depth players that you can plug and play, but we're still basically missing 2 O-linemen. Yeah, and they use big resources on the offensive lineman. First-round pick after first-round pick, and it doesn't all pan out. Lady St. Irvin says, who do you think our wide receiver core will be? Olave, Rashid, definitely Cedric Wilson. So there's your first 3, Olave, Shaheed, Cedric Wilson. And then you got to pick 2 of the next 3, which is Bub Means, Equinemius St. Brown, and A.T. Perry. I think you might keep Bub Means because you just drafted him and you can use him on special teams. And then you got to make a decision between Equinemius and A.T. Perry. I kind of think it might be Equinemius who makes it, but we'll see what happens. I mean, A.T. Perry's a mixed bag, and it's kind of unfortunate it's kind of panned out that way. So if you guys have more comments, you can get them in. Before you do that, though, I want to get a word from another one of our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook. So let's get into it, guys. NFL Week 1 is just about here. And with a new season, that means there's new ways to get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. If you're ready to place your first bet, you can try something new and place it on a player prop. Maybe someone to score a touchdown. Maybe you like Taysom Hill or Olave to score Week 1. You can go on the DraftKings Sportsbook app and download it and use code BOOT, B-O-O-T, all caps, for new customers, and you get $250 in bonus bets when you place just $5. So again, $5 with promo code BOOT, you get $250 in bonus bets. You also get 1 month of NFL Premium on us. So that's only at DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777. And again, guys, please gamble responsibly. For more terms and responsible gambling resources, you can see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Premium offer only available to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms are available at NFL.com/terms. Once again, thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for being part of the program. And to get some more comments here before we wrap it up, Fred says Olave needs to wear a Guardian cap in games. He's already had a few concussions, and we absolutely can't lose him. And those things look dumb, by the way. They do look dumb. I'm all for player safety, though. I'm all for player safety. No doubt about it. You know, I'm all for it. Chase, why did we fire Pete Carmichael? I'm going to end it on this one because I love this question, Chase. Because Pete Carmichael fucking sucked. That's why they fired Pete Carmichael. He was just sitting there on the sidelines doing absolutely nothing. That's why they fired him. I lied. Won't be the last one. We'll finish off here. Lady St. Irvin says, thoughts on the O-line today? I felt much better about them. Again, mixed bag. Some good, some bad. But running lanes opened up again. The big plays that they made in the passing game, you did get some there. But I don't think the O-line's a good group. And I strongly feel that way. I just don't think they're good enough. But again, we'll see. Maybe the regular season we get shocked, but you're going to need McCoy, Ruiz, Fuaga. They got to step up, and it's a lot of pressure on them. So I don't love the O-line, but we'll see what happens. So that's going to do it, guys, for this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I want to thank you so much if you joined the show, if you liked, if you subscribed, if you left a comment, whatever you did. I greatly appreciate it so much. Week 1 is just around the corner, which means we're going to have halftime shows during every game and post-game live streams like this. So make sure to subscribe to Boo Crew Media's YouTube channel for more from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation. Enjoy your Sunday, everyone.